Oh, well, we're just going to get started.
All right,
Welcome.
that sounds good.
Welcome to Over 50. Starting over, I'm Barry Edwards.
And I'm Merle Garrison.
How are you today, Merle?
Oh, crazy as ever.
Yeah, we've had a busy day. We are late for us. We're about 3 hours late for us.
Yeah.
And discombobulated. We are usually a little bit more prepared, but we just talked it out and figure, what the heck? It's a phone call between Merle and I that you are just the fly on the wall with. So this is our basic phone call. And I wanted to tell you today, the last couple of days, I went through some crap with eBay. So I've been very excited about this new camera that I'm going to get.
Yeah, you've been talking about that for a while. Did you get it?
I sure did.
Nice.
Another eBay experiment. I have had nothing but bad luck with eBay over the years, but I wanted this particular camera. It's a Logitech. It's constantly rated as the top for what we do. And it's sold out everywhere. I cannot find it anywhere except on eBay, which I hate.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I hate eBay because what was the story? I even wrote an article about it on Quora, of course. I badmouthed eBay because they are clearly, their client is the sellers, not the end buyer. Their client are the sellers. Okay.
More and more, that's the case. It's getting like that on Amazon too.
Ooh, I've had nothing but good experiences with Amazon, but with eBay, now I've gotten, I remember what it was about 3 years ago that I bought an inkjet printer from there and the price just looked really good, and I'm like, said it was brand new, this Epson. I was very familiar with the brand. I get it. It's clearly used. It's not even in the original packing or anything like that. So I said I wanted my money back. You got to ship it back. I'm like, I'm not paying for your shipping. You're trying to scam me here. Well, once you ship it back, then we'll reimburse you for that. And of course they don't. So I got screwed on the shipping, whatever that cost. But of course I got my money back. So I wrote this article on Quora, badmouthing them. And then a lot of people made comments that were either sellers or maybe even had a vested interest in eBay. Okay. Well, so in the last couple of weeks, I've had the situation where first this camera, couldn't find it anywhere. I mean, there's a lot of places to choose from, and no one has this camera anymore, and except this on eBay, and it was for $20. So I'm like, oh, that's clearly a scam, but for $20, I'm going to take the risk, because even if they give me a used camera when they said it's new at that price, if it works, I would keep it.
Right. It's not like they put their mouth on it.
Right, really.
I hope at least.
You're right. So no, in what they sent me was, I'm not going to open it all, but for those of you that watch.
Oh, that looks new.
Oh, well, it's new for what it is, but it's a no-name brand. It's this cheapy piece of plastic the resolution is 640 by 480, which I haven't heard of that since like the turn of the century.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's garbage.
Is your $20 camera?
Yeah, it's not worth $20. It's
I
not
thought
worth
it was
$5.
Logitech. So it's not Logitech?
No, they did not. They did not.
See.
It was false advertising all the way.
Gosh.
Big scam. The other thing was a minor scam. I mentioned 2 items. The other thing was a bicycle tire. I've had 5 flat tires already this year.
Really?
This season's like 2 months.
I mean, are you riding off road or what?
I ride everything everywhere, but I don't know. I had a bad year last year too, with probably 4 flats. Prior to that, the previous 10 years, I probably had 4 flats in 10 years. You know what I mean?
What is the deal?
I don't know. It's just I got this cloud hanging over me, but nonetheless,
the flat tire cloud. I've had that before.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like the last 2 times was I went with my friend Herbie, who I told you about before, out to the towpath for a little bit.
Right.
Went out there about 5 miles, got a flat tire, did not have, normally I have a spare tire with me in my pouch, or at least my
Right.
patch kit. I had my patch kit, but it's hard to patch a tire when you're
I
out.
hate patching tires. It's the worst.
At home, it's okay.
Yeah,
You
right.
got
But you're
water
on the
there.
road,
You got
right.
everything you need. And
Right.
that's the thing. If you don't have water that you can submerge the inner tube in, it's
hard.
It's almost impossible.
It
It's
is.
almost impossible. So anyways, I had on the way back from the top. So I'm 5 miles out. And I'm like, oh man, I'm sorry. I just ruined this trip. So I have to take my little tiny pump, which is emergency use only, and pump it up as much as I can, about 30 pounds in there, and then ride as fast as I can until it gets flat again. And I had to do that like 10 times to get back. At least 10 times. I was exhausted. I was so sweaty because you sit there.
I know. It's a total workout.
Yeah. So I came home and I changed the tire, put a brand new inner tube in there. And do you know this trick? Like, and I saw it watch a YouTube video, which I was very glad, and I want to share this, is when you do get a flat and you change the inner tube, make sure that you run your fingers along the inside of the tire.
Yeah,
because that piece of glass or a nail could still be in there. Yes.
Yep. I've had the nightmare experience of it. I just put it in there.
Right. So I did that. Everything checked out. I put a brand new inner tube in there, put my bike back together. This is the same day. And I go for a bike ride about 2.5 miles out, just in the neighborhood, and I get a flat. And I'm like, what the hell? And I'm in the same situation again. Taking the little tiny pump out and riding as fast as I can. And about 10 times I had to do that in order to make it back home. And that's when I just decided to order new tires. And I thought I ordered 2 new tires, and they're good ones, like with this wire stuff. Some people call it Kevlar. So it's more puncture proof. I only got the one. This is off Amazon. Good brand. Forget the name brand right now. But I only got the one for whatever reason. I know I ordered 2. They probably ran out, because this is my point, is I couldn't find a second one to match it, except on eBay.
Oh.
Right? So
there you go again.
Yeah, that same situation. So I order this tire, and I get it a week or 2 later, and it's not that brand. It looks the same, but it's called Sunlight. The brand is Sunlight. And I'm like, I'm so pissed. So I get on there and do all my complaining. And today I just went on Quora again, updated my 2-year-old post, 3-year-old post from before, and told these latest scams. Just an in your face to those people that opposed me in the comments. I just think eBay's the biggest scam. So both of those I have refunds out on, and I'm not paying for any shipping. I told them I know that scam too.
Right.
So just a warning out there. That's what eBay is about.
I got to say, I think I threw Amazon under the bus there at the beginning, but I can say that, we get stuff from Amazon, and when sometimes we have to return things, they have made it so easy to return things with Amazon.
Yeah.
That's the coolest thing, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you can just drive up to Whole Foods or wherever, and now you don't even have to go in. They'll come out to you, and here you go, and you're all done. I mean, boy, they sure have made it easy. And you know what else? They've got an Amazon store that's going in down the street from us. It's one of the first ones in the country where it's going to be, you don't have to go through a checkout line. I don't even understand how this works, but somehow you walk out with your groceries, it charges your credit card. You don't have to wait in lines.
You know what? It might be on your phone. They might be reading it right on your phone.
I don't know
if you have the app.
Yeah, I don't know exactly how they're doing it, but boy, that sounds pretty cool, actually. And I think that these other supermarkets are gonna be in a world of hurt if that's the new paradigm.
I got to tell you, I know you're going to be on the same page with me here. I love Amazon. Lisa loves Amazon for the convenience. You're not going to really find lower prices. And the beautiful thing is being able to check out all these ratings on things that you kind of maybe want, not sure.
Yeah.
And then, so you read these reviews, and if it's got over 100 ratings, then it's like, okay, because I'm always worried like the first 50 are front loaded with family and friends. Please rate my product to get off the ground.
The first 50.
Sure. But, once you start looking at that star rate, so what I'm saying is it's the best bang for the buck that we've ever had in our lives. You couldn't do this stuff 20 years ago.
The shame of it is that, the mom and pop stores, they're all in, I mean, it's not just supermarkets, it's hardware stores, it's almost any kind of store.
Right.
And retail space is pretty expensive. And, so jobs go by the wayside. This is an interesting paradigm we're looking at, especially with this whole COVID thing that's happened. Nobody wants to go to the store anymore.
It's a good excuse.
I don't. Yeah.
Oh, it's oppressive. We got to get to that in a minute. But I wanted to say on the other side of Amazon, sure you feel the same way, as it's just scary what a monopoly it is.
Giant.
They are, these tech companies are owning the world. And that leads right into like what is going on with Facebook and Google right now. There's a lot of talk about what do we do about them? They're really controlling free speech.
They really are. They really
it's
are.
Scary.
Before we get into that, I just want to say that, here we are right before the weekend. It's Father's Day coming up this weekend.
Is it? Happy Father's Day.
Thank you. And we all have fathers, so happy Father's Day to you. And I wanted to ask you, growing up at Father's Day, was there anything special that you and your family did for Father's Day?
I cannot think of that. No, I cannot think. My father passed away in, I think, 98. I was 98. So it's been a long time. And, but you still would think that I would have memories as a kid, but I can't tell you what we did for Mother's Day either. I mean, I know that we did a breakfast, probably made breakfast for them and gave them cards and stuff, I'm sure. But it's not like we had a ritual that we did that I can think of.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And you?
Yep.
And you?
Well, my dad, yes, we would celebrate Father's Day, but you know what? I always found that it was the hardest thing on earth to come up with something to get for my dad or do for my dad on Father's Day. It seemed like he already had everything.
Sure.
And the other thing too is that he would always, wherever you got him, you couldn't afford to get him anything that he really found any value in. And so he'd always have this thing.
A tie. Get him another tie.
He'd wrap it up, you'd do your best, and then you'd hand it to him, and he'd look at it, and he'd shake it, and then he'd go, okay, this is, and he'd tell you exactly what was in there, and it would be exactly that.
I do that all the time at Christmas and stuff.
It was really, really terrible. That it just took all the fun out of it. I remember one time we went to Cedar Point to the amusement park, and it was like he had a frown on his face the whole time. He doesn't like amusement parks. I don't know why we went there. But anyhow,
I don't like them either.
Yeah, I grew up, working at an amusement park, so I always liked them. But whatever.
Sure.
But we got, so my kids are coming over for Father's Day, and they were asking me, what do you want? What do you want to do? And I thought, well, what do I really like? You know what I really like is I like steak. My mouth just watered when I said that.
Still are like that.
Oh yeah, I love it. And so I said, let's just make some steaks on the grill, and I am almost slobbering now.
So is Scott. Your brother Scott is watching this, and he's like right now, damn, I got to go make a steak.
Scott is like, bless his heart. He's a food critic, basically, and I'd have him. The guy knows everything about food. I don't know how he got like that. He
told me how to make a hell of a ribeye, and I did.
I mean, he really knows his stuff.
He knows his steak, man. Yeah,
he knows everything about food. So the one thing though is if you cook in front of him, you're not going to do it right.
Oh, one of those people.
I made a mistake one time, and he came out there to the grill, and he's like, what are you doing? Wait, why are you doing that? I'm like, go back in there.
It's like cooking with Lisa. I know.
Oh yeah. Well, she's an expert.
She is, man. She's chef status. I have my staples, and I like to cook. I really, and I'm
You're a
the
great cook. You taught me
thank
so
you.
many things when we lived together.
Yeah, I'm the chopper and dicer. Oh, I bet I didn't tell you this. It was about a year ago. So we're downstairs on a Sunday, and yeah, it was like a year ago exactly. It was a beautiful day. We were going to make all beef hot dogs on the grill and homemade coleslaw. She makes some seriously good homemade coleslaw. I got to chop it. I'm the chopper. I got my cutting board, the big giant knife that I sharpen like it could, paper. And I'm talking to her as I'm
Oh no.
chopping.
I see where this is going.
Yeah, God, I cut off the top of my thumb right through the middle of my thumbnail.
Harry.
Oh,
You know,
seriously.
it's like some things never change. When when we were, in college together, you're a graphic design major, you had that
Oh,
X-Acto knife.
yes.
I've never seen anybody cut themselves the
Yes.
way that I've seen you cut yourself with that
Thank God we use
X-Acto knife.
computers now. Oh, but this is the same thumb that when I was about 17 washing dishes in a kitchen, a restaurant bar kitchen.
Yeah.
I had to cut do prep work. I had to cut the tomatoes in one of those meat slicers.
Oh,
And
boy.
so tomatoes, you do a little thicker, right?
Right.
And yeah, and the tomatoes slipped out and I pushed it back up with my thumb and I cut off half my thumb, the side of it. And
Oh, man.
they had to fish it out of the garbage because somebody threw it away. When I went to the hospital, they sewed it back on. They sewed it back on and it took.
That's a gnarly.
I know. We
Only
probably
you,
lost
though.
half of our listeners right there. Oh, but it's the same thumb. So I cut another half of it off in a different way. I did not go to the hospital and get it sewn back on though. It's still, so it's the top of it this time. Last time it was the side of it. And it's still numb on the top there. My thumbnail grew back though, which I didn't think it would.
I'm just surprised that you even have fingers anymore.
I know.
Seriously,
I know.
I remember coming home and like, hey, come here and look at this. And you'd have some kind of injury that you used some kind of freezing thing and you'd freeze it all up. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. I remember that time.
Good.
That time I came in to your bedroom, you're studying, and I put rubber cement all over my thumb. And you can't see it. It's clear. These are the tools of the trade back then. And I lit it on fire. I'm like, Merle, look.
I'm like, oh my God. I do remember that.
Yeah, too funny. But I was just going to say, because of that deli slicer incident, when I go to the deli and order lunch meat, which I do like every week, I just have to order it and then walk away while they're doing that on the meat slicer. I can't take it. I'm just holding my thumb.
Oh, I bet. That's probably, you probably need therapy for that.
Yeah, I'm sure I do. Hey, never talked about the O5O segment. We're just going to talk a bit about what I'm doing. And I wanted to rub off on people that are starting their own ventures, have their own ventures, want to improve what they're doing, or thinking about going out on their own. And I've been mentioning that I've been working a lot with my guy that does lean consultation. And he's been doing it since the 80s, starting with Honda. And I think I told you, working with being trained by Mr. Honda. I got all the pictures to prove it. And so you don't get more certified, qualified, all of that than he is. Okay, so he's quite the expert. But so to iron this all out online and be able to make conversions, I need to be able to communicate this extremely clearly to prospects. That could be company owners, vice presidents, depending on how big the company is. VP of operations would be one for sure. You know what lean is? It's improving processes so you increase efficiency.
Big deal. Yeah.
A huge deal for sure.
Right, all major companies are implementing some type of lean process.
Yeah, so it's very important. But what's really important is to differentiate yourself from everyone else. So I talk about creating your value propositions all the time, which is trying to find your unique take on it, your unique spin, and it's hard to do. It's really hard to do. It's often a a process of time that evolves. And then when you get it, you do a value proposition for each service, you start to find a commonality, and it starts to gel with you. And it's like, okay. And when you get it, now you can go anywhere. And when you talk to people, you get up in front of people and explain what you do, and you got this confidence because you come from this unique angle. Okay, so we're working on that, but here's what I'm really having a hard time with is want to develop the proprietary process. He's done this for like 30 or 40 years or something. And I'm trying to help him develop so we can make graphs and charts and then videos and of the proprietary process. So like I want to develop a quiz where we can ask all these questions about where you are within your processes. And at the end, it gives you a score on a chart of where you are in lean efficiency. So then he can immediately say, okay, now I have a good basic understanding of where you are. Here's what I can offer you. So to create this chart of where they are, it's kind of like I did a dummy of it. So it's like, okay, so in a scoring of 1 to 10, you're up here at a very novice intro level, and 2, 3, okay, and at the number 4 level, that's black belt level, okay? So you're doing it all in between. Oh, that's so hard. It is so hard. But
I can only imagine that's got to be.
When I get this down with him, see, I got to drag everything out of him because I don't know this stuff.
Right.
He knows it. And I'm trying to put it into what the cookie mold that I have, that I want, that I envision. And it's really difficult. So anyways, I say this because people, if you do have your own business and, and you got a website and you've been doing networking, maybe you're looking for trust factors like the book that we offer through Neil Howe, so that you ask the expert kind of book, so that you have that kind of credibility. Well, you need to come up with your proprietary way of doing things and need to be able to communicate it. Otherwise, I say this all the time, otherwise you're only going to differentiate via price. And that's a horrible way to live. You got to be the expert at what you do. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult from where I am, trying to extract this stuff and put it.
I can only imagine, because lean processes, it's a complex thing. And to be able to distill it down into some type of a Likert scale quiz, I can imagine that's got to be.
And maybe I'm going to find it doesn't lend itself perfectly to a quiz. It might not, because there's times when you're finding out that you have a leadership problem rather than a process problem.
Right.
You might have a leadership problem, and that's often.
This is more essay answers.
You're right. You're absolutely right. So it's tough. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted to talk about just the state of things right now here in California. This leads into over.
I am dying to know.
Look, things are starting to open up. I mean, I'm encouraged by this.
Okay.
My gym opened up the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact, and I actually went on the first day. I had 2 reasons for doing that. One was that it's been 3 months basically since I've been able to go to the gym. So yes. I really wanted to go. And number 2 was I wanted to get in there before it got all COVIDed up.
I hear you.
No, seriously, I'm not really worried about that. But it was pretty interesting how they did open up. They had it set up where first, we're supposed to be wearing some type of facial covering anytime we're
you
outside.
Work out like that.
Well, here in Los Angeles, it's whenever you're outside. That's I guess the law. Yeah. But no one really does that. I don't. But when you go there, before you check in, we've got an online app. You gotta go through this whole, I don't know, basically it's a disclaimer that says you don't have any of the symptoms of COVID. Right. And then you have to reserve your time. You can do it right before you go or the day before. I kind of found that to be kind of neat, because once I set a time, then I had to go. I had to be there.
Okay.
So that kind of worked in my advantage.
Okay.
When you get there, you got to wear your mask. They
How do
have
you
a
do cardio with a freaking
Okay, hold
mask
on. Let me continue because you don't have to. But it's
Okay.
just when you get there, you've got to present with your mask on.
Uh-huh.
They actually took my temperature with one of those
A forehead thing?
non-touch. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And I was relieved when I didn't have a temperature.
Mhm.
You go in, and so when you go to the machines, they have like every other machine is open to keep that 6-foot social distancing thing, and you only had to wear a mask when you got done with a machine and you're going between machines or between exercise areas. The thing that I thought was cool was because you had to reserve it, and that they were making sure to control the amount of people. It was like I had the whole place to myself.
Nice.
And I mean, maybe it was because it was the first time I went, but I actually enjoyed it. It was pretty
Yeah.
cool. The locker rooms, hardly anyone was in there. You
Nice.
could still take a shower and everything. And they had somebody that was like cleaning the shower. There's a whole bunch of them, but
Like,
there.
could you get out of here, please?
Yeah, it was kind of weird, but at the same time, it was like kind of comforting
Could you
that
get
it's
my
being
back?
sterilized every
While
time.
you're there, could you
That
get my
wasn't like
back?
that. Yeah, no, and I would have left immediately. But I was happy that it was open. I'm glad we're doing that. And get this. So within the last time we did a podcast, Anne Marie and I went to a restaurant and ate there. It was one of our favorite restaurants. We haven't been able to do that in months.
What restaurant? Tell me.
It's called the Local Peasant. And it's right down the street.
What kind of food?
It's like just American kind of, is mostly like bar food there.
Okay. Good bar food, though.
Yeah, it's really good. And
I like good bar
the
food.
people are really cool. It's a really neat place because it's all open to the outside. And so even though you're inside, it's sort of like you're outside, and it was a beautiful night and everything. So again, you had to reserve because it's like the 25% capacity or whatever.
I don't know how they're making
is.
money like that.
Well, it was kind of neat though, because, we got there on time. We get in there. You have to wear your mask on the way to the seat. But then once you sit down, you don't have to do that. And so it was pretty good. It's starting to feel a little bit like things are getting normal again.
I'm glad to hear that, because I honestly, even today, I was looking at Google News that California, it looks like you guys are still being hit hard with this virus.
So that's the thing I wanted to go into next.
Okay.
So here's what we're seeing out there and I talked about this on the last show, is that, hey, look at these states that are opening up. They're not really getting hit harder than with COVID-19 than any of the other states. And then over the next week, it's like, oh my gosh, COVID, it's happening everywhere, especially these states that are opening up. And what are we going to do? But here's the thing, is that over the last few weeks, the exponential testing that's been going on in these states, that's been the thing that they're not really talking about. So of course, if you test more, you're going to get more people that are testing positive for COVID. I think the real thing that they're not really looking at is hospital admissions. And I think that's really going to be the thing that tells whether or not you're in trouble. Because remember, the lockdown had everything to do with an overflow that they were predicting that was going to happen in hospitals, and there weren't going to be any beds, there weren't going to be any vents.
Right.
We're not seeing that.
No.
And so you're also seeing, like, for instance, here in California, even though they're getting more people, they're opening up more and more. And I just don't see, we're also seeing in the news, we're in China, they're reporting this second surge of
I read about that. Yeah, I saw that
virus, and people are all scared about that. But
didn't they say it was like a stronger wave of this virus? It was something like, oh no.
Yeah, so I have to say, I just find the timing of this very suspicious.
Yeah.
The things that we're seeing coming out of China, I don't know how we can believe anything that we hear coming out of there.
Totally agree with you.
Especially after what happened at the beginning of the year when they lied to us. I mean, that's proven.
They always lie.
Completely lied to us. And so, it seems like we're starting to open up. And then that's when they have this second surge, and they try to scare us. It's a stronger virus. Maybe it is, but it's the boy who cried wolf now. How do you believe anything that they say?
I'll tell you, Merle, I really expected here in mid-June that it would go way down. It's a flu. It's summer. You know, I just thought just naturally it would go way down.
Do you have any friends that have gotten COVID yet?
No, I don't know anyone that's had it.
So I met my first friend that actually got it. He's actually a recruiter that I talk to all the time. He's a great guy. His name is Ian, and he said that. And by the way, that could be a fictitious name. Just
I know, too many vowels at the beginning. It's like, what?
I'm just going to protect his health record. But he says that he and his family all got it.
Wow.
They went to like a family gathering, and then they got COVID. They came back and they all started having these symptoms. And one of the people that got it was his mother-in-law, who's like 64, and she's got COPD, so she's a high risk. It was completely mild. They had these mild symptoms. They were over it very quickly.
Yeah.
For all of them, even the 64-year-old woman with
it seems
COPD.
like there's some different strains. It does.
It seems to me like just like the flu. You have people that, okay, getting the flu sucks. Nobody wants to get that. Some people die from the flu because
a lot of people do.
Yeah, and they're vulnerable, right? But when you compare that to the size of our population, we don't close up our society because this is happening. COVID-19 seems to be still, I mean, I keep going back to that. It seems very similar to that whole thing. Not to be taken lightly. You don't take the flu lightly, but we don't close down our whole way of life.
Agreed. I mean, protect the most vulnerable. That's right. And you've said that before. The nursing homes right away should have been
they should
under lockdown and every precaution taken right there. And they were super slow on that, but they locked us down right away.
They sure did. Boy, they didn't waste any time. And I got to say, everybody talks about how, Trump, he's the bad guy. He shut down everything and he didn't shut it down fast enough. And I got to say, I'm a conservative. I voted for Trump. But I don't think he handled it perfectly. I thought he could have handled things a whole lot better. I don't think that he should have. It kind of felt like he got bamboozled himself into shutting down everything. And so I for me as a conservative, I feel like I'm trained to look at everyone in politics with a high degree of suspicion.
Oh, I am more and more every day. Even things like that Fauci, comes out, oh, everybody's got to wear a mask. Oh, don't bother with the masks. They're not doing anything for you. Oh, you got to wear a mask again. And I forget the source on this one, but I heard that the whole, oh, don't bother with the masks, that's not really going to do anything for you, was because that they were afraid that the medical professionals wouldn't be able to get masks.
They'd run out.
So they lie. Now, they couldn't tell you that. Now you can't, like, okay, now I know that. I don't believe anything that you're going to tell me now. If you would have said that, hey, we do have a mask rationing problem here. We need it for medical people. So please, with discretion, but don't lie to us.
That actually brings up a pretty important thing that I wanted to cover here today. And it has a lot to do with that. Just, politicians lying to us. And what we're seeing right now is that we've got sort of a trifecta. You've got politicians that you can't trust, and it doesn't matter if they're Republicans or Democrats. Right. I don't trust any of them, by the way. And then you got the media, who they seem to all have the same talking points. They're all saying the same thing at the same time. I mean, if you're a journalist, how is it that you suddenly have the exact same script as the guy on another station
at the same time? And I told you about
immediately
listening to that Bell and Stogger, I think his name is, those two reporters that were on.
I bet you got those names wrong.
I bet you I did, because that's what we do. Bud and Budette. They left. She was on something like the Huntington Post, something on the left, and he was on Fox all the time. And they both said that you get your talking points in the morning as soon as you sit down, and they're very thorough. And your career is going to go on an easy trajectory if you just follow them. And even when you're wrong, it doesn't matter, because you got the whole system behind you. And they left and went on their own show because of that, which is very interesting. Very interesting. And we are back. And we
Hey.
had a little technical glitch there. And to those out there listening or watching, you saw nothing. We're right back. You lost no time in your life, whereas days went by for Merle and I. It's like a UFO abduction.
We're still wearing the same thing, though.
Yeah,
so
we're still wearing the same clothes after those aliens redressed us after probing us in unseen places. What were we talking about? Where are we? We are at current events and politics. How about the Atlanta situation? Yet another shooting.
And it's one of those things, Barry, where if you're watching this, it's like, oh my gosh, how could this happen at this? This
Again,
is the worst timing for something like this to happen.
It really is. This is the kind of thing that, okay, so the guy is not pulled over. He was sleeping in his car at a Wendy's.
Yes.
And it started out very peaceful. He was clearly very intoxicated. At which point he started resisting arrest and grabbed the one cop's taser, ran off, turned back, shot the taser at him, at which point the cop shot him twice in the back, which is always a bad look, shooting someone in the back.
Yeah.
We know that from Clint Eastwood
terrible
Westerns. Yes.
Yeah. You're lily-livered.
Yes, exactly. I don't know what to say about a whole lot of that. They burnt down the poor Wendy's. I don't know how that got implicated in it. But
well, they were the ones that called the police. That's why they burnt down the Wendy's.
Really?
The way that this started is that the man didn't just fall asleep at Wendy's. He fell asleep while he was in line in the drive-thru.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought he was just that's really important.
It is.
It's funny. It's funny. Like, what are you going to do?
If there's anything. So of course they're going to call and they're going to say that, hey, we need some help over here because this guy, and they had apparently gone out to the car to try to wake the guy up. So it wasn't like they just called the police. They actually tried to wake him up and everything, and he wouldn't wake up. So they called the police. And so what are the police going to do? They're going to try to wake him up too. They're going to figure out pretty quick, wow, the guy's drunk. They had a hard time waking him up.
Well, I mean, when somebody falls asleep in their car in line at a drive-through restaurant, yeah, they're messed up. They're definitely messed up.
So, they give him a sobriety test, and they actually have this on camera. You can see that he's trying to walk a straight line. He doesn't actually pass the sobriety test. And then they actually give him a breathalyzer, and so he fails that. And so they go to arrest him at that point. And then you've probably seen the film where suddenly he becomes erratic and violent. He's punching the police. Then he takes, while he really overpowered these two guys.
Wow.
And he takes one of their tasers and starts to run. And the guy that shot him, I think this is an important point because the guy that shot him is not the guy that had his taser taken.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
He doesn't actually know that it's a taser. Now, most people have had a chance of watching this probably, 20 times. It's a painful thing to watch, but I mean, the media, they show it to you 50 times. And so, it's easy for us to armchair quarterback. It's just like watching football. Oh, I would have done this. Yeah, sure you would have.
Well, you know what everyone says? Why don't they shoot him in the leg?
I've heard that.
I always hear that. I don't know, Merle. I don't know the answer to that. Here's what I think, though. Is that the dude followed exactly what he was trained. When somebody turns around and fires a weapon at you, you shoot to kill, as you or him. I think they're trained that way.
And here's the other thing too, is that it all happened so quickly. If he turns, we've had the privilege of being able to see this in slow motion, or at least the advantage of being able to see this in slow motion. But everything happened so quickly. He turns, he fires, and then the guy shoots. So one thing I know about, obviously, police officers are trained, but to shoot somebody in the leg, that's not an easy target to hit.
Now you probably get him in the butt, that's going to hurt.
And here's the other thing. If you shoot somebody in the leg, that could kill them too. You could bleed out from that. So there's a lot of things that you could hit if you try to shoot them in the leg. And I don't even want to go into that, but that could be.
You'd rather die. Yeah.
It could be a fate worse than death.
Yes. Yes.
But here you don't know that this guy's not trying to kill you. And
That's
so
exactly right.
he shoots and the guy dies. Now, what you don't see on film is that they try to resuscitate this guy. They try to help him. They're pleading him to stay alive and everything. Of course, the guy ends up dying.
Uh-huh.
So that's really what happened. And now, immediately after that, within 24 hours, the mayor asks that these two guys get fired. So they're fired immediately. And now, within another day, the guy gets charged with murder.
Wow. This is really unfortunate. I mean, I think that these are sacrificial lambs, and I'm glad I'm not one of them, you know? I mean, it's a hard job being a cop,
Can't
and
imagine.
I would hate to be one, especially now. But especially in the last 10 years, there's been a growing anti-cop sentiment going, there always has been for a large part, but more now than ever. And I'll bet you behind closed doors, all these cops are saying that's what we're trained to do. They, really didn't do anything wrong here. That's what I think.
Well,
I don't know that. I don't
I
know that.
I think that we could all look at this situation and say this probably could have been handled differently, but to charge the guy with murder, I think, and to fire them immediately without an investigation.
Yeah.
um, I think
Sacrificial lambs.
I think the better you look. Here's the thing: is that I don't want this guy to die for falling asleep in his car while he's
Of
drunk.
course
That
not.
shouldn't happen. But the guy resisted arrest. He took a weapon from a police officer.
Right.
Then he fired it at him. He pretty much did all of the things that we know not to do in order to
Yeah.
live through the experience.
And I'm going to say it. We're all thinking it. If it were a white guy that did that, we wouldn't even be hearing about this.
No, we wouldn't. But here we are.
Mhm.
We're in a situation. It's post George Floyd,
Mhm.
and this is another thing that I noticed was that the very next day, after riots actually well, it was looting and burning down the Wendy's, which was a despicable act. I mean, we saw
Yeah.
it live on television. It was terrible. They
Yeah.
they they actually shot off fireworks in the Wendy's after they looted it and broke all the windows. And what did the Wendy's people do wrong? They
Right.
really, they didn't do anything wrong.
No.
What, they called the police? That was wrong. Anybody would have done that. Who knows? It might have been a black person that actually called the police. We don't know that.
Mhm.
But then uh, you've got uh, you've got these attorneys that come on for the family the next day, and they're talking, they gave about a half hour speech that was carried by all the news networks, and they've replayed this time and time again. And I just think that the irresponsibility of the news media to show a one-sided account of what happened in the midst of riots that are happening across the country, and this unrest and these protests seems to be a decision that could just throw gasoline on the situation. And
They've
it
been doing
really
it for
has.
years now. They've created this. I mean, largely, I am not going to dismiss our semi archaic police methods, training or lack thereof. Um, I seriously like the whole defund police. I certainly agree. You and I talked off camera, or in agreement. We think we should have higher trained police. Not it's going to take more money. It's going to take more funding, but it's a day and time where we really should have better trained police. I saw a video a few days ago. I think it was the subject matter. I was like wondering what this term is, and anarcho capitalism or something like that. And the definition of it was really taking the power of things like police away from the federal government, because they were saying stuff like there's way more private security guards than there are police, and this is handled in the public sector. Yeah, if you go to the Cleveland Clinic, they have their own police force, for God's sakes. So it was just more, when we're in a gated community, we're taking a certain amount of protection upon ourselves. A gate, and who's at the gate? A security guy. And
Right.
so there's a lot of different ways that privately we protect ourselves and don't rely on state police, and certainly nothing federal. So I just think maybe it's not maybe, I think it is time that we take our security to another level. Now, the way that the media and these movements are trying to take it into anarchy, I'm not in agreement with at all.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I think that we look at Trayvon Martin, and it was the guy George Zimmerman that shot him was on a neighborhood watch, and so that there's an alternative. But again, you run into the exact same thing.
That's a really good point.
And what I want to say is there seems to be a concentrated effort by certain organizations that aren't really trying to make things better, but they're actually concentrating on destabilizing
Yes.
the society that we live in.
Yes,
And
for sure.
they seem to be working in collaboration, because the idea of abolishing police departments and defunding police departments in order to make it safer does not make any logical sense whatsoever.
Nothing's making sense right now.
And again, if you look at these attorneys that are representing the family, two things jump out. One was that one attorney was talking about how he's sick and tired of having to get with these families that have just lost the father of their family, and the kids don't have any father in the house any longer. Then you find out that this young man that was shot actually had just been released from prison. He was serving a 7-year sentence for child abuse. He had actually beaten his kids, and he'd gotten let go early because of the threat of COVID-19. And that's why he was back out on the street. And so with his freedom, he gets drunk and drives, putting us all in jeopardy, and then resists arrest. So in other words, he wasn't really being a father to his kids in the first place. He was a threat to his kids. And
he was a threat to society.
The kids may have been safer with him in prison. Not that, again, not condoning his death. That's terrible. But, the way that they've misconstrued this or misrepresented this.
The
second thing was that the one attorney had said that the police had not, this is the day after this happens, so there's no investigation, but he says two things. One, the one attorney says, hey, the police didn't fully describe why he was being arrested, and I would have resisted arrest as well. Wait a second. A black attorney is saying to America that you would have resisted arrest? Look, here's what we all know. If the police are arresting you, even if you think that it's wrong, don't fight it. You can fight this in court, but the way to get hurt or killed is resisting arrest.
Correct.
The other thing the other attorney said was, if this police officer who shot this young man had had more compassion and hadn't been so scared, this wouldn't have happened. Well, how does he know what kind of compassion this police officer has? And how does he know if he was scared or not? I just think that it's, again, terrible that these things were actually allowed to be in the media when there's still a pending court case on this.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Don't you taint the jury pool by actually coming out with information like that? I mean, there was something called the Sam Shepard case that the press had tainted the jury pool, and Sam Shepard ended up going to jail, and then he was freed. But I mean, that was a famous case, and it just seems irresponsible to be putting that kind of information out, let alone firing the police and and then charging them with murder without the investigation. What should have happened is this: the lawyers shouldn't have been able to go into the media, and they should have been suspended without pay and with pending the investigation.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
Handled.
That sounds like standard procedure right there.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I wanted to mention San Diego this week, just going off of your logic on what you were saying about reforming the police departments, they decided, rather than defund their police department, their city council now is injecting another $512 million into the police to change up how they're actually policing. And I think you made this beautiful point last week, is that they believe that the best way to really enforce peace is to work with the neighborhoods.
Yes,
And in order
absolutely.
to have an outreach to the neighborhoods,
Yeah,
you actually need more training and you need more police officers.
correct.
So they're actually reforming, and reforming takes
Money.
more money. And
Yes, it
so
does.
I say kudos to San Diego.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out in the next year or two. You know, the stats. That's a thing, is the stats. We completely ignore real statistics during this inflammatory time. The media wants this so badly, just fanning the flames of this whole anarchy thing right now. But I think you know some of these statistics. I'm terrible with statistics, but isn't it something like easily for every one of these videos that you're seeing of like this guy getting shot at Wendy's here the night, can't you find at least 2 white people that this has happened to for every 1 black person?
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. So last year in 2019, there were 9 unarmed blacks that were shot by the police, and there were 19 white people that were unarmed that were shot by the police.
Pretty good.
And if you start to look at the other statistics, way more white people get shot than black people. But you also see that it does not represent the proportion of society, which is 13% black, 60% white. Those numbers don't pan out, and it seems suspicious until you look at the fact that over 50% of the violent crimes that are being committed or perpetrated are by black individuals, mostly black males, who only represent 6% of the population.
Now,
So
if we take a look
this
at
is the
that,
problem.
yeah, okay, let's take a look at that for a minute.
Go ahead.
Well, doesn't that say that there's already been training in this direction, that to not try to incite anything? Why are twice as many white people being shot and killed by police if more of the crime is being perpetrated by black people?
Well, and also the studies are showing that police officers are less likely to use a weapon on a black individual than a white individual. And it has everything to do with what's happened socially over the last few years, that they just don't want to be able to get into that. Mm-hmm. So I really believe this, that if we really want to look at the problem, we have to take a look at what's happening in black society right now in order to uncover the problems. And I've mentioned this several times on the show, that you've got about upwards of 70% of black young people growing up without a father in the house. Right. And then when you start to look at why that is, and how society is actually incenting that type of behavior, I think these are things to take a look at. And we do know that children that have 2 parents in the household are twice as likely to A, graduate from high school, and B, not go to prison, and C, not end up in poverty. Right. So these are things that I think are the main things that we can look at. And if we are going to look at unarmed people that are being shot by the police, we should not put our racist sunglasses on and view it through those lenses, because we can see that the problem is indiscriminate of race. But for instance, if you take a look at George Floyd, and you take a look at this young man who was shot in Atlanta, we have no evidence whatsoever that says that these are racism problems. Yet the media immediately jumps out and pours the racist gasoline all over it.
They do.
And this is why we're having all of this turmoil in all of our cities. And I think, once again, why is that happening? It seems extremely irresponsible for it. And here's another thing is, of course, politicians have jumped on this bandwagon, and it gives them something juicy for them to campaign about. And I just think we have much bigger problems in this country,
and we can't talk about them. We can't
No, I
talk
mean,
about it.
nobody cares about them because they just care about what's in the mainstream media every day, this
Hmm.
inflammatory racism thing. Well, we completely ignore the fact that the country is suffering from a huge debt problem right now that
Hmm.
is threatening to strangle our way of life into the future. That's a
Right.
much more dangerous situation than what we're seeing happening in the police force.
Yeah, we got a lot of 2020 is going to go down in the annals as being just one hell of a year. I'll say that, for sure. So I don't know where you start with all of our problems, but we can't really talk about anything. And when somebody says racism, you can't hear, no one can hear anything else at that point.
No, you're
It's a
right.
brilliant way to get a lot of legislation passed, slide right on through Congress, uh, when all through all of this smoke screen. And
Well,
even when I say that, I sound like I'm being very uncaring about the racial strife that is going on right now. And there's nothing further from the truth. I have a lot of friends from a lot of different uh, places in life that I'm very aware of what's going on, but I don't think that we're ever allowed to get at the truth.
and when we get the context of the situation, it's usually not exactly what it's been portrayed as. And
Right.
that never makes the front headlines ever.
No, very true. Very true.
What we're seeing here is a systematic breakdown of our society as we know it. I mean, if we defund the police departments across the country, well, I mean, we're seeing it already. We're seeing where mobs of people are going around and they're just taking whatever they want. They're spray painting graffiti on everything. They're beating people, innocent people in the streets. Lots of people have died already.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it looks like without the police. And is that how could that be what people want? I really believe that there's a silent majority that's out there that really does not want this. And
Mm-hmm.
I also really believe that for some reason the media is incented in telling a story that's absolutely not the truth, that that the majority wants the things that really the majority does not want.
No, you're right. God, you make me think so many things. Like I'm riding around on my bike, I think about this kind of stuff. My mind just goes, and I'm listening to podcasts all the time while I do it, like Jordan Peterson. And he said something the other day. I forget the real context of it, but it was like, everything he says is always like, wow, did he say that like yesterday? Because it sounds so poignant to what's going on right now. And he said, he was talking about society, how we traded in slavery for self-slavery. And I was like, whoa. And it's like,
Wow.
well, we kind of did. For how long now have we, if you want to buy into the American dream, which is available to everyone of any race, your father proved that.
Yes.
Uh, right. If you want to sacrifice, buy into the dream, get, work your ass off in your career so that you can be on an upward trajectory, eat a lot of shit, and get up every morning when you don't want to, and make a lot of sacrifices every day so that you can live, your family can live a certain lifestyle in a certain community that is agreeable to you. That's basically the American dream. And it's a lot of sacrifice. It's all sacrifice. And that's what Jordan Peterson was saying is, well, yeah, there was slavery in this country, in a small part of this country with a small amount of slave owners. I say that because everybody is supposed to be racist today. I don't
Right.
know any racists myself, but well, I have growing up a couple. But
I've met them. I don't
yes,
have friends that are
of
racists.
course you don't. Right. But his my point is that I'm getting at, I was like, wow, that is what our society's been like for a long time now. It's self-slavery where we do all this hard work ourselves that we don't want to do day in, day out, but for at a price, at a price. And here's where I'm going, Merle. I wonder, here's the other thing is, we're getting old now. We're going to be old men. We're cranky old men. Don't like seeing the world change. And it's always for the worse. Remember when we were kids, how much better it was? Start saying all that shit.
Right.
And it starts slipping out from under our fingers, and the younger generation takes it from us. And God only knows they're going to destroy the world. Every generation says it. So I worry about that. I think about that.
Remember how dumb we thought our parents were?
Of course.
They don't know anything. They're just old-fashioned.
What if, I'm throwing it out there, hypothetical, what if society is going to change for the better, and at 30 years from now, we're looking back on this and going, oh my God, those people worked really hard doing a lot of crap that they did not like doing every day of their lives. You know how on Over 50 some earlier episodes, we talked a lot about our dreams of creating something more of a so-called retirement community. But for people after 50 that are tired of chasing that dream doggedly of, I don't want to say a dream, not chasing their dreams, working in a career for a certain amount of money, but the trade-off is doing stuff you don't like whatsoever. And now after 50, you're like, I still want to work. But I want to feel purpose in my life. And I want to do something that feels meaningful to me. So I get out of bed in the morning and I'm excited about this day. Maybe we are transforming into more of that.
Well,
maybe
it's
the anarchy, and as corrupt and as large as our government is, maybe it can be torn down a bit to maybe produce something more like this.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying about the silent majority. I really believe that there is a majority of people out there that don't agree with the direction that we're seeing portrayed on television. And what we've seen throughout history is the pendulum swings both ways. And we swung way over to one side of things. And I think very young people, the pre-millennials, I don't know what their generation is called, but I think that a lot of those people are looking at this and going, okay, this is crazy. Because for a lot of those people.
Do you mean the generation after the millennials?
Yes.
That's Generation Z. That's post-millennials, and they're supposed to be, by reports, more conservative.
Yes, and just like we were rebelling against our parents because they had become conservative, and then we want to be more liberal or whatever. We just tend to go the opposite direction of whatever our parents went. And I could see there's a lot of millennials are parents now, and I think their kids are looking at this and going, "This is crazy." And so that kind of balances things out. Not saying that everything millennials are doing wrong or conservatives are doing wrong or liberals. There's a balance that happens here in this country, and it's a beautiful thing, actually.
It's interesting. Boy, did that conversation take a wild turn right there. Who knows? Who knows where this goes from here? I really don't. It's scary. We tend to think the worst when well, you know what? When people are burning down your cities and destroying businesses and stuff, of course, we're going to think the worst. But
yeah, well, it's pretty ugly when you watch it on television and how radical this whole movement has been. And, I kind of feel like these people are being used when I take a look at the violent people. I think there's a lot of people out there that have good hearts that actually want to do good and they want to see good. And even those people that we saw in your neck of the woods in Bay Village that said that they wanted to use their white privilege to do something good.
That term.
And, but wait, hold on. To that woman's credit that said that, I think that she actually believed what she was saying and that she did want to do good. And she's looking at people of other races, particularly black people, and she wants to do good for them. She's been told that black people are being hunted down and that the police are just willy-nilly just murdering them out in the street, and that she's got this white privilege thing that nobody else has, and she wants to be able to help people. I believe that, but I also believe that unfortunately, I think that this movement is using people's good intention and really the real people that are behind this are really trying to break down our capitalist American way of life and change that into a socialist way of life.
Well, I agree with that completely. And it's really interesting is what's going on in Seattle with that Chaz movement, which the mainstream media doesn't really report on.
That's too bad.
Right. And my point is that when you put this socialist movement in place that sounds really good at face value, all these things sound so good at face value, what's going to happen very quickly in this Chaz movement is it's going to be, they think it's all peace and love and flowers and prayers and singing and stuff. It's very quickly going to become a totalitarian kind of a fascist kind of society. It's going to be more dangerous than any other place that you can go. You're going to have to walk a very narrow line and wear the uniform, whatever that may look like, or you're not going to survive well in that society.
Well, I've already seen, like the very first thing they did was they put armed people at the borders of the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. So, you know, that's already happened. I saw a guy trying to come in there with a sign that said "Jesus saved," and they kicked him out of there. There's trash everywhere. We've heard from the police department that rapes have happened in there, and the police can't get to them.
That's awful.
You know, the place looks like a war zone, although they keep saying that it's like a summer fair there. It's a summer fair I wouldn't go to ever.
They're destroying that city.
And then all the recordings I've seen, the language that's coming out of these people, I would never want my kids to be over there. It's shocking. And when you see that the mayor of Seattle and the governor of Seattle are just not doing anything about it, it's hard to understand.
Agreed. Hey, we're going to have to wrap up here soon. You watching anything cool on TV or Netflix, Amazon Prime, anything like that? Anything fun?
You know what? Boy, I can't think of anything that I've seen lately, but I did want to, I had a parting word here, and because I brought up white privilege, and I just want to say I don't personally believe in white privilege. What I do believe in is that we that live in this country are all privileged.
Yes,
because we live in the greatest land that there is. Where you brought up my dad. You know, my dad grew up in a shack. His mother refused to take welfare because she felt like it was like taking heroin. You could never get off of that. And
it's not far from the truth.
She encouraged my dad as he was growing up, even though they had nothing. She told him that he was going to go to college and that he was going to make something of himself. So she instilled a belief inside of him. And he, like you said, he worked like a dog in order to make that happen. He provided a great life for my brother and my brother and I and my mother. We lived in a very nice neighborhood. He actually lived far away from where his office was, so he'd have to wake up really early in the morning in order to get to work on time, and he'd get home late at night. And he traveled all the time as well, so he made the sacrifices. These are things that, you know, that maybe somebody would say, oh, well, you had a form of white privilege as well. I mean, because under their definition of what white privilege is, we were living under the privilege of capitalist society, then we had white privilege as well. And I say this, we all live in a very privileged society, and we should be grateful for that. We shouldn't actually be ashamed of that.
Exactly. I really think the American dream has been misconstrued with this white privilege thing. You know who's kicking ass with this so-called white privilege thing? Asians. They're doing far better than the rest of us.
The fact is that the color, this is a society where we truly can live.
Meritocracy.
Exactly. The dream that Martin Luther King had, I keep saying it, where we can be judged by the content of our character rather than the color of our skin. And many people, including my father, have proven that.
And by the way, that was 50, 60 years ago. Right. It was a lot harder then.
Right. And it was still true back then too.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah. Hey, you know what? That's a good party note.
I agree.
You know? All right. Merle, thanks so much, man. Talk to you next week. I can't wait. Okay.
Sounds great.
See you.